Tighten your lines as we get ready to sail the seven seas on the Political Pirate Podcast. Join Captain Ted Yoho and the salty dog John Martin as they search far and wide for the greatest treasure of all, the truth. From local Florida news to nationwide stories and the globe beyond, we've got it all mapped out. Now here's your hosts, the salty dog John Martin and Captain Ted Yoho.
Well, top of the morning to everybody out there, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 3 Ps, the Political Pirate Podcast with your host, the old salty dog here, John Martin, and the captain of our pirate ship. I believe he's coming to you from some undisclosed location in Georgia, Captain Ted Yoho. Good morning, Ted.
Good morning, John. Top of the hour to you on a Monday morning, and I am in the mountains of North Georgia watching the leaves change and the cold weather.
Yeah, we talking about changing, man. There's all kind of things changing from our country, not always good. But I have to mention this. I know we're not a sports show, but we talk about a little bit from time to time. That I'm here, right here in at Spurrier's Gridiron Grill, which is literally a museum to college football, to sports in general, and certainly all things Gators. So I would certainly be remiss if I didn't mention, and as a public service, that if you're looking for a highly paid job, one has just come open, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it. Billy Napier has been officially fired as the head coach of the great University of Florida. And there are a few million reasons why you might want to try for this job, Ted.
That's right. And if you don't perform well, you get a multi-million-dollar payout.
Yeah. So, I'm not going to get into all the details and sports of it. I certainly have my own opinion, which people
we'll let Shane do that.
Let Shane that goes before us do that. But I will say that I wish Billy and his family well. I'm sure it's a very trying time, even though they got quite a parachute. It's still, no one likes to fail at something. So
no, they don't.
I wish them well.
That's right. And we appreciate him being here. Things didn't work out. It's time to move on for both him and the Gators.
Well, that was probably the biggest news coming out of Gainesville, but the biggest news probably coming over the weekend was this so-called No Kings rally. And there's been all kind of different speculation as to how many people attended, how many groups there were, but the general feeling of it, or news out there, is that there were roughly 2,500 of them, including one here in Gainesville, and there was somewhere between 6 and 7 million people that participated at some level. Like a lot of things, that's probably exaggerated, but certainly it was. There were a lot of people. So what are your general thoughts, Ted? I was fishing at the time, so I didn't see anything till I got back. I don't know how much you actually followed it, but what were your general thoughts about what you're hearing, what you may have seen, and all of that?
Well, I think it was a very well orchestrated, that's the key word, orchestrated event. I was surprised that it was as peaceful as it is, or that as it was. And I think what you're seeing is there had to be strong messaging that there will be no riots, no violence or anything like that. I mean, there had to be, because this group is the one that typically does that. Saying that, I think it's a big counter that they're trying to accomplish to the Charlie Kirk momentum that's going on with Turning Points USA and all these college campuses that are asking to have chapters on their campuses. And so the left has finally woken up to say, you know what, we've got a problem here and we have to counter it. And they're doing this, but they're wrong in their messaging. You know, the whole thing about the No Kings rally, give me a break. You know, Donald Trump's not a king. He's going to be out in 3 years. There'll be a new election and he'll be gone. And the thing I get a kick out of them. They're walking around with the American flag turned upside down, which means it's a nation in distress, which I agree with, but not for the reasons they say. You know, they said there's a threat to democracy and we have a constitution, we must follow it. Unless they're in charge, then the Constitution becomes a living, breathing document that has to change with time. But now it's a sacred document. You know, I wish I had that the whole time and we wouldn't have the problems we had with the Pelosi's and with Barack Obama. If you want to talk about a king, Barack Obama, you know, I have a phone and I have a pen and I can do what I want. And so, you know, their messaging is wrong. And then look at what they're trying to do. They're trying to prevent Trump from enforcing the law on immigration and protecting ICE employees and federal property. And they're rallying against that. You look at what they stand for, and they are the anti-American group. And Mike Johnson said they're anti-American and a hate group. I don't know if there's a lot of hatred on that side, but they kept it in check over the weekend.
Yeah, well, when you were talking, it made me think of something I was watching over the
weekend. That's my job, John.
I know that, man. You're very good at it. I was, they played these DVDs and stuff on the boat when we're moving, and somebody had one of the Game of Thrones series. So I watched multiple scenes from it. Of course, I've seen it before. And one thing you learn from that is that whenever there is a king, especially if they're out of power and then they come back to power, everybody dies. In other words, Donald Trump got impeached not once, but twice, got defeated in an election, whether it was legit or not, it's a whole nother subject, but he was ousted from power. He returned to power, and now they're having no kings rallies, and everybody is alive. And I'm not advocating death, but if Donald Trump were truly a king, they not only wouldn't have a rally, but their head would be on a pike.
Yeah, really, they would be. And, again, it's laughable the way they go after this. When you look at, they say how he's weaponized everything as far as the Justice Department, Custom Border Patrol, and ICE. He is doing what he has to do to fix the problems that they created. And now they don't like it, number one, that he's closed the borders, but number two, that he's going after the people that came in here illegal. And, and we know who they are. A lot of those people, they're convicts, they're criminals, they're people that have been deported multiple times. So he's going after that. But they want to make it sound like he's doing this, extrajudicially and doing something illegal. He's trying to fix a problem that they created. And we see this over and over again. And, it's a losing proposition for them. And I think the American people are smarter than that, although it pains me to see that many adherents to what they're trying to do. And I look at them, when you start looking at Bernie Sanders' message or AOC and that, everything they talk about is anti-American, and they're talking about the oligarchs again. But, look in their own backyard, look in your closet, Bernie. Who's the oligarchs funding you guys? I know you got a segment with Bernie.
Well, you mentioned about the fact that you were surprised about the lack of violence, and there was some violence, and we'll play some of that. But you're right overall that there was, considering what's been happening. But I have a theory on that, and you mentioned who's funding it. Obviously, George Soros, it's pretty well documented. They're not even trying to hide it, that his group is funding a lot of this type of stuff. And I suspect that they had a conversation at the upper levels, because this stuff is well organized, and to use that term, orchestrated. My theory is that they were told, look, all the cameras are going to be on y'all. And one thing we don't need is violence right now, because that will be all that the media talks about and all that people see. So, tomorrow you can have violence back in front of the ICE facilities in Chicago and stuff like that. But today you need to keep it peaceful. I firmly believe that I only have circumstantial evidence, I'll admit, but I firmly believe that's a factor.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And it's like you said, Soros isn't hiding that they're funding these. And then the other thing, John, when you dig deeper, there's organizations, communist organizations, funding these No Kings protests. There'll be the Chinese Communist Party will be in there. You look at the money. It's already documented. The Chinese Communist Party is funding a lot of these. Why would they do that? They want to bring down America from within. And so, you see these things over, and they talk about how Trump's, the king and all this, and he's taken over and ruined our democracy. They're the ones, they don't stand for democracy. They want authoritarianism. They want socialism, which leads into communism. And just look at Jack Smith. He was a special prosecutor that was appointed, and he was appointed illegally to go after Donald Trump. And in the process, he's doing wiretaps, taking phone records from 7 different senators, and they're all Republicans, going through their phone records. He did this illegally. And you talk about an abuse of power. This was all under the Biden administration. And I just read a story this morning about a lawyer from Brazil who worked with Bolsonaro, the previous president, how the Custom Border and Patrol Agency under the Biden administration got their records hacked, and they put this lawyer being in America during the Biden administration. That guy's been jailed in Brazil as working to do a soft coup in Brazil, and that was part of the evidence that put Bolsonaro in prison for 27 years. And this all happened under the Biden administration. So Trump is there. This stuff has got to stop, and the American people need to come together. And I appreciate those people having those rallies, and I appreciate it being peaceful. But your message is wrong. You're on the wrong team.
Well, you mentioned about the surveillance of the senators and all that just came out under Jack Smith and the Biden administration, and you talked a little bit about Obama, but people tend to forget, because the media, and this baffles me to this day, doesn't really cover it, that Obama, his administration, they wiretapped the press phones in the House of Representatives, I believe, while you were actually there, Ted, that they were spying on the press. And the press should, think about this, if Donald Trump did that, the press would that's all you would hear about. But they don't even ever mention that Obama actually tapped the phones of the press. I mean, I would venture to say that probably only about 10 or 20% of Americans even know that.
I agree with that. And that's why our program is so important, because we're here to educate. But he didn't only do the press, John. He went after Trump, and they wiretapped him. And this is going to come out in those investigations. And, these people need to be held accountable that, are on that socialist side. People need to read Obama's book, Dreams of My Father. I mean, he talks about how he has an underlying hatred for America. You can read that. And then it said, if things come down to I have to pick sides, I'm going to choose the side of my Muslim brothers. I mean, he says that in the book. And so you know where he is, and that side that is not in power today, they're angry. This protest over the weekend, it was well orchestrated. They had the talking orders. They stayed in line. But go back to when Trump won the first election. The march on Washington, D.C. You had all these people hating. The resist movement started. That's who they really are. And don't forget that, because if they get back in power, they're going to do more of that, but it'll be on steroids. And they will have government authoritarian rule, just like China has. There's no doubt in my mind. That's why we can't allow them to get back in power with the people they have in charge. You were talking about the media. Look at AOC and the things that she said. She came out, the earth was going to end in 12 years. All the garbage she said about our custom and border agents, the people that are dedicated to their job, telling lie after lie after lie, telling people it's okay to shoplift, and the list goes on. She ran Amazon out of New York because Amazon didn't want to go up against a loudmouth like that causing noise. So she crushed all those jobs that were going to come in, and she's on the wrong side, but the media never calls her out. And, it's the big media that fuels this stuff and keeps it going. I guess it's good for ratings, but it's bad for America, and it's bad for freedom, for what the country stands for.
Yeah, well, and we covered this several months ago on the show about Ocasio-Cortez. All you really need to know about her, Ted, if she was going to run for Senate or, heaven forbid, president, is look at her district. Her district, where she actually represents in New York, is probably one of the most unlivable parts of New York City there is. It is become literally a third world territory in New York City. Check it out. Don't take my word for it. Look it up yourself.
No, and that's exactly what they want to create for America, because that wealth gap that they talk about that's so unfair, they want to eliminate that and bring everybody down to the lower levels of society. And that's not what America is. I mean, we are not that. And that's the one thing I said, I'll be damned if that's going to happen on our watch. I left Congress early because of my pledge, but people need to get up and realize what's coming, and they're not going to relent. I mean, they're going to keep pushing and pushing and pushing, and they're going to grow numbers as we're seeing in New York. Again, Madani leading the race in New York. And I know you've got some pictures you want to show, so I'll be quiet. We'll talk more about that.
Yeah, I think what we're going to do is take a little break or a little earlier than we normally do, because I don't want to chop this story up too much, but I want to come back and take a bit deeper dive into the No Kings, what it may mean, and ask a few questions kind of rhetorically out there. So we'll take a quick break, and please help and support our sponsors. If you'd like to be a sponsor, look at the tagline. It says contact Freddie and call that number. We'd love to have you. Take us to break, Ted.
No, we sure would love to have you as a sponsor and promote your name out there to keep this message going out there. Because again, our job and our goal is pure. We want to educate people. We want to get you activated and motivated. So take care. Let's go to break, John.
We'll be right back.
Although the owner of Lewis Oil Company maintains she is 29, Lewis Oil turns 60 years old in June. Chevron would like to recognize the North Florida second-generation family-owned business, celebrating its growth and staying power. Lewis Oil Company maintains significant on-hand supplies, strategically located fuel depots, a delivery fleet, on-site service, fuel card locks, and convenience stores. Lewis Oil Company understands its responsibility in the local economy by providing service and delivery on demand and in crisis. As a first responder for 18 Florida counties and the Southeast from Texas to Virginia, we are proud of this rare accomplishment. Lewis Oil delivers.
This is Ward Scott, and I want to thank all our sponsors who keep the show going and pay the bills. The Ward Scott Files premium sponsors are Crime Prevention Security Systems, large enough to serve you, small enough to care.
Meldon Law, the only official injury partner of the Florida Gators.
The Ward Scott Files Gold sponsors are Lewis Oil Company,
Shoot GTR,
On the Spot Dry Cleaners, R&R Construction, and Style Cuts. If you are interested in promoting your business on the show, you can visit our website, www.wardscottfiles.com, and click on the Advertise Here banner on the right side of the page, or call my friend Freddie at 352-284-3733. Again, thank you to all the great businesses that support the Ward Scott Files. And remember, if you like the show, thank our sponsors and support the businesses that support us.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. May God have mercy on your soul.
Ward, that very much surprises me that you've never been tased.
You can't handle the truth.
All bees poop.
A warthog. He's going to come up the steps. Here he comes. Oh my goodness, and he's huge. Hello, boy. Wonder if we can pet him. Hi, boy.
Can we touch him? No, don't.
Help me! Help! Help!
And we're back to the Political Pirate Podcast, the 3 Ps, with your host, John Martin, and the captain of our ship, Ted Yoho. Well, when we went to break, we were talking about the No Kings rally and what it kind of means and what it maybe doesn't mean, what message. I want to play a brief snippet of a speech that Mr. Bernard Sanders gave at one of the No Kings rallies. And it's interesting because he talks about Speaker Johnson and what he said about the No Kings rally. But Bernie makes a point that it's just the opposite of what Republicans are saying. And let's hear Bernie in his own words, and we'll talk about it. Check it out.
Please bring Bernie on.
The Republican Speaker of the House called these rallies Hate America events. Boy, does he have it wrong. Millions of Americans are coming out today not because they hate America. We're here because we love America. Mike John.
Well, there you have it, Mr. Bernard, as I say, Sanders, of course, a true capitalist, if there ever was one, because he's made more money off of doing nothing than anybody I've ever known. He is the ultimate capitalist, I suppose, but never provided a job for anyone. But he basically says that you and I probably have it all wrong, Ted, that the people that are opposed to or not maybe have concerned about these No King rallies, we're the anti-Americans. They really are the people that love America. That's what Mr. Sanders is saying. What are your thoughts on that, Ted?
All you have to do is say Bernie Sanders, and you know my thoughts on him. This guy is so far off base. If you love America, why would you do the things he's doing and going around and bash America all the time? And he wants to bash Donald Trump and the things that are going on in here when we're trying to fix this country and get it back on track. He's just off base here, and I think I know he believes in what he's saying, but his messaging is wrong. And as you pointed out, he's after the tax the wealthy, go after the oligarchs, but he sits there and gets funded by oligarchs. He's got 4 or 5 homes. He's a multimillionaire, but that's okay. He worked for it, but the only thing he's ever done is a government job. The guy was broke when he went into office 100 years ago, and he's a multimillionaire now. You would think you would embrace a country that allowed you to do that and fight to protect those God-given principles. I mean, he's in the party he's an independent, but he supports the party with Tim Kaine, who says your rights don't come from God, they come from government. And that speaks loudly enough right there. Well,
on top of that, Ted, there's a reason why Bernie Sanders is not the president, right? It's not because he didn't get on the ballot he was on the ballot as a Democrat, but the Democrat upper echelon, like the Tim Kaines, even though I agree with what you said, and they kept him from being able to win because, in my opinion, they knew that if he actually had power, he would do exactly what he said he's going to do, and it would impact their money. He made the cardinal sin, in my opinion, of saying, I'm for taking the money out of politics. Because if you take the money out of politics, there go the Clintons, there goes the Tim Kaines of the world, there goes the Obamas. I mean, they didn't have a pot to piss in when they basically got there. They made all of their money off of politics. So when Bernie made that statement, basically that I'm taking money out of politics, he signed his death knell with that group of people, in my opinion.
He sure did. And I agree with him on that. And I'm looking to run for a higher office. And one of the platforms is going to be, we're going to get the money out of politics. And it'll be a grassroots organization. And, and it's the same way we ran our campaign when I ran against the incumbent that I ran against. We didn't have an organization like they have. We didn't have that kind of money, but we won because we took the message to the people. And we had a grassroots organization. I mean, we had handwritten signs. I'm convinced you can do that nationally, and the media will go crazy. The political party, as Tom Hayes Morrison, you brought out, said there's the party of big government. It's one party. And they don't want that because they want to be in control. But I think that's the cabal that needs to be broken, and look forward to doing that.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%, but and I know I'm telling you something you already know, the both sides will come after you when they do that because, like I said, sure, that's the main reason Bernie didn't really get a big shot at being president is because the powers that be of that single party, the left and the right wing is what Mr. Morrison, our kind of mentor, said. They came after Bernie and prevented him from basically, becoming president. And so I guess in one sense they did a service, but they don't want the money out of politics. There's no doubt about that.
No, absolutely not. But, he's talking about the No Kings rally. They want no kings, but it was the kings of the government, the party of big government that had the kings that said, you're not serving, you're not going to win. And I mean, look at what they did with Kamala Harris. They anointed her. which I'm glad they did. It was the worst mistake they could have done, but it sure worked against old Bernie there. And so he's rallying against, somebody that's fighting against the cabal up there. And you would think he would join forces with Trump.
Well, see, with Bernie, and it all ties into all of this, they're socialist / communist. That's what they are. And if you look at the communists, they want, and Mandami, we're going to talk more about him in a minute. They're all for equalizing outcomes for the lower class of people. They want everybody to be at one kind of rung and all have the same, no matter what their work ethic is or whatever. But the upper echelon of people, they stay in power. They're the ones with the Dutches, they call them. They live in total comfort, isolated. But the peasants, like you and I would be, are kept at the lower level. That's what Bernie and them want, and that's what Mandami wants for New York. If you really look at what he's saying, he wants to create a level playing field, a level outcome for everyone, but he's not willing to give up his perch.
In God's eye, we're all born equal. We all are born equal. We choose to be different, and you can't be different if you're in a communist country or a heavily socialist country. You can be different and achieve in a country like ours that has opportunity, with your God-given rights being protected by government, not dictated by government. And this was the whole beef I had with AOC, is she's spewing this message about some utopian, far-off utopian that she wants to create and tear down America because it's so toxic, and create a Venezuelan type of utopia that Hugo Chavez tried to create, and it's a disaster right now. That's what will happen here. And these people are communists. I mean, look who funded these rallies. Look who's participating in those. And, they need to wake up. People need to wake up, because this is not a good direction for the country to go in. And it won't succeed.
Yeah, well, if it does, if people want to see what a utopian socialist communist system looks like, go watch that series, The Hunger Games, because that's exactly where we're headed, where everybody else is serving the major cities, the emerald cities on the hill, and the rest of us are just fodder. That's what if Mandami and Bernie Sanders have their way, that's exactly what will happen. Well, there were some violence. You mentioned about the violence. There was some violence, because in L.A., there was a massive No Kings protest that ended up by the L.A. Police Department, not the ICE agents, not federal forces, but by the L.A. Police Department, that declared it an unlawful assembly. I want to play a short clip of a little bit of what happened, and there is a little bit of vulgar language, but I want people to understand this is supposedly L.A.'s finest citizens out there, peacefully assembling No Kings rally, and they're attacking the local LA police. Check it out. There you have it. And this is in a city, L.A., and they've been making the news a bit lately where, for instance, Karen Bass and the one and only, the nature boy out there, I suppose, Gavin Newsom, they basically said just last week, I think it was, that they needed to give relief to people who had been illegal aliens that were deported because now their families need support and all this. So they want to give welfare. The shutdown is supposedly about, we're not giving money to illegal immigrants. But out there, they're literally admitting that they need unemployment benefits, they need health and housing and education benefits for illegals, while at the same time, Ted, this is what gets me, at the rate they're trying to redo LA for the burning and all that happened, the fires that were done by a liberal, apparently started. They're on track to rebuild LA in about 400 years.
That's right.
They've only
It'd be
done
like
about
Pompeii.
Yeah, they've only done about 10 permits in the whole area for reconstruction. It's crazy. But anyway, I got off on a tangent. Tell me what you think about all that, Ted.
No, I think that's the real sentiment of that No Kings rally. It came to violence in LA, but the media doesn't cover that and tell you that. And I'm sure there were other places like that didn't get the coverage, but it shows the real intent of those people. I mean, they can't help themselves. They hate this country. And, Trump is the one they can go after now. If it was Ronald Reagan, they would go after him. It was John Kennedy, they would go after him. They love chaos, and they thrive when they have chaos, and you can't stop those people from that kind of hate. You can stop them by enforcing the law. And that's why I'm glad Trump made Antifa a domestic terrorist group, which it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was vandalism to some churches, by the way, and a bunch of public structures, a lot of overpasses painted on and stuff like that. I had a picture. I don't know if he'll put it up about the church, but there was some vandalism.
But no abortion clinics or things like that, or DNC headquarters. It'll go after all the conservative things, the hatred where they have the hate.
Yeah, absolutely. But I got a few questions here, Ted, and I'd love you to chime in on them however you see fit. But one of the questions I would have, because I've been watching all of this, is beyond Trump derangement syndrome. I have not heard anyone really articulate a problem that they're trying to address with the new No Kings rally. Everything really is they just don't like the redheaded guy. They don't like Donald Trump. That seems to be their only cohesive message to me.
I got to make a correction. It's orange. It's orange, not red. But the orange man. You're right. They don't have. That's where it's directed. It's directed at him, and it's directed at them not being in power because they want to keep pushing. Go back to Obama. We're 5 days from 5 days away from fundamentally transforming America. They were so excited and ecstatic when his 12 years, including the 4 of Biden, were able to change this country as much as it did. They lost that game, and they're in shock. And the Trump derangement syndrome, as we've heard so much talked about, and we talked about on Monday or Friday. It's real, and their true colors are coming out. And I know when we talk about Zohran Mamdani, those things are going to come out. And again, they're just on the wrong side of this. And the American people, they're fed up with this. These whole things with these protests, it's a weak movement. They had a lot of numbers, but the American people are tired of that for the most part. The majority of them that brought Donald Trump in, including myself. What are you protesting against? I mean, you got food, you can get food every day. You got electricity, you got water. We don't have any problems in this country to say compared to the rest of the world. A friend of mine sent me an article about DEI from a woman's perspective and how they thought it went way overboard, trying to advance women that shouldn't have been and all these things. And we went on. And he goes, it's really kind of a good article. And I read it. And I said, yes, well written. I said, but what they're talking about is disarming unilaterally the United States of America. Because I'll tell you, China, Iran, North Korea, they don't give a rat's behind about DEI wokeism. And so, yeah, go ahead, America, disarm yourself, and we're going to take you over because you're weak. And he goes, I never thought about that. He goes, that's a good point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway.
Well, I got a kind of a list of questions here that I would tell people, if you want to get in debate with someone or someone who's running for political office, to just
Sure.
ask them these questions and a follow-ups kind of thing. But my first one is, I would ask people, are you for unfettered illegal immigration? In other words, are you just for a totally open border? People come and go into this country as they choose. And if you are opposed to that, or if you're for unfettered immigration, is there any limit, and what would that be? So, what are your thoughts about that question? Because I think it's a legitimate question to ask someone.
No, I think it is. And if they say, yeah, I would just come back and say, why do you feel that way? Why do you think there should be unfettered illegal immigration? Of course, they're going to attack you by saying illegal. They're not illegal. They're humans. And we want social justice. Fine, come in the socially approved way, follow the law. No, I think that's a great question.
Yeah. And then the second one I had.
You know what? No, before you go there.
Go ahead.
But just ask them, say, well, do you lock your doors at night?
Yeah, I hear you. Do you have an alarm on your car? But
right.
Here's a question I always have, because one of the fascinating things that's happening is the whole states' rights issue. States' rights was like at the crux of the Civil War. And now you have all of these Democrats, which were the Democrats, I guess, in the South at that time, that they're now arguing about states' rights. They have a state right to be sanctuary city. They don't need federal. So my question would be, should there even be federal laws? And if there should be federal laws, then who should enforce them? Because they're basically in this thing where they believe in a federal system as long as it works to their benefit. But when you question their local decisions, they don't want any federal intervention at all. It's a bizarre kind of complex twist there to me.
It really is. And it's that old saying, these laws should apply to thee, but not to me. And, the 10th Amendment, I think we're all strong supporters of that. I know everybody that's listening is, that's your states' rights amendment. And the states do have rights, but when the federal government has, laws that they're supposed to enforce and the states blocking them, then you start getting into the situation Andrew Jackson did with South Carolina when the state wanted to secede from the Union. And at that point, when something like that was that egregious, you're looking at tearing the Union apart and collapse of the nation. And so I think with these laws, the federal government has every right to enforce federal law. And, to ask somebody that, should there be federal laws? And if so, who should enforce them? I think that's a legitimate question. And you talk to somebody like Karen Bass or Pritzker or Newsom out in California and Illinois, they're going to fight back and say, no, this is our responsibility. Well, you're not protecting these things, so you're not doing your job. Therefore, we're coming in and intervening. Absolutely.
And, the phrase that comes out to me when all this, because they accused Donald Trump of, the enemies attacking American citizens, all this stuff, which he's really not. But, the oath of office that the president takes, many elected officials take, and I think the military pretty much takes, one of the lines in it is defend against enemies, both foreign and domestic. Because our founding fathers knew that the enemy is, quote, from within, is probably the most dangerous one there is, because you don't really see it. And I call it kind of the old sweet gum, which is a tree that we have down here in the South. It looks really pretty on the outside, but in the inside, it's rotting away. And when a high wind comes, it just collapses. That's where if we don't defend against the enemies from within, we may look grandiose, but we will collapse when the wind really comes.
John, if you look at our top 6 problems that are existential to this country, debt, China, energy, immigration, education, and trust in government or dysfunction of government, out of those 6, they're all 5 of them are domestic problems that are going to tear this country apart. The only external one is China. And so I agree with you 100%. We got to defend against enemies, foreign and domestic, and we need to look internally and solve our own problem. And, we can't help another country. It's biblical. You can't feed a neighbor if you're starving. We've got to handle our internal problems here first before we can be that that strong force that kind of keeps other countries in check because of the what if they do act against us? What if America does? And we don't want to be the policeman of the world, but yet we want peace and order around the world so people can have liberty and freedoms.
Yeah, and this last question I have, I think is really fundamental and something that while we need to do, as you say, educate, motivate, and activate people, because so many people don't really understand the founding of this nation, don't know it from a historical perspective.
No, they don't.
And my question would be to the people, do you trust government? Do you trust government? Because the founding fathers did not trust government. A lot of people don't say, look, I'm telling you, the founding fathers had a hatred of government. They did not trust government at all. The Constitution is anti-government. The Constitution literally is to protect the people from the tyranny of government. That's what it's all about. It is not to empower government. It is to limit government and to protect we the people and our inalienable God-given rights. That's what it's about.
You know, it really is. And people, if they want to really follow up on this, and I hope they do, read, from those old white guys that were slave owners and all that. Read what they wrote about government. The Benjamin Franklins, Thomas Jeffersons, John Adams. You read all of those, James Madison. You go through all those stories, and it was the distrust of government is what led them to do the Declaration of Independence and the words in the Constitution. And I think it was Thomas Jefferson that said, the Constitution is not to hinder the private citizen. It is to put shackles on a tyrannical government to keep them in check so that they can't go beyond what the Constitution says. And, you're so right on that. Do you trust government? No, I don't trust government. I was in government, but I still don't trust them. And I think the majority, I don't think American people do, whether you're on the left or right. I don't think they trust government, which is a very dangerous thing for a country. But it can be a good thing because you'll hold them accountable to what they're supposed to do. We just want the government to function the way it was designed to. It's kind of like the motor in my Ford Expedition. I want it to do what it's supposed to do. I don't need to tend to you every day. Just do your job. And if it doesn't, I'll get a new one, and I think that's the way we need to look at our representatives. If you're not doing what you're supposed to do to make this country stronger and a better life for our families in the future, I don't need you there. You need to get out. And we're seeing that dysfunction right now. They're not solving the problems that have been going on way too long. And, we can talk about that. Like when I came in Congress, that we're at $10 trillion in debt. We're at $37 trillion in debt. Obviously, somebody doesn't know how to fix these problems. Throw them out.
Absolutely. We need one big vote of flush that flushes them all out and start over.
Need some Drano.
Yeah, that's what we need. But, I would ask another kind of follow-up question to people, because to me, the real question is not, do you trust government? You shouldn't trust government. I'm not saying that at all. The real question to me is, do you love your country? Because that's what should unify us to try to fix these problems. But, the Democrats are always trying to splinter people. So let me just address that real quick. And we talked a little bit about this last week. If you're a Native American, indigenous people, you should never trust government. Because look what happened to you under government. If you're an African American and you want to, go back to slavery and all that, you should never trust huge, big government, because look what they did. They lied and all. If you're an immigrant trying to come here and make it, if you're quote the Democrats' term, marginalized people, they're the ones should not trust government. The only people, this is a very telling thing, Ted, and I get on a rant, but I can't help it sometimes. The only real demographic that Kamala Harris won was the billionaire class and the doctorate class, the ones that had the PhDs. I think that is a very telling thing. Those are the only two categories of people, demographics of people that she won. Billionaires and
that's not true, John, because she said she had the highest vote of anybody that ran and lost.
Well, she might have stretched the truth on that, but I'm just making the point that really people like you and me and people who are disenfranchised or marginalized groups, we have a lot in common because we don't trust government. People need to understand that the Constitution is not the government; it is the document for protecting us from government, and that's fundamentally people don't understand that.
Well, you got to send that soundbite right there to Tim Kaine, because I don't think he understands that. He's a sitting, people that don't know, he's a sitting senator from Virginia that said that your rights come from government, not from God.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to switch gears.
I still can't believe he said that.
Yeah, and he's a highly educated. I guess I call them educated idiots, but we got too many of them. But I'm using a little bit of a template from the New York Post. But we're 2 weeks away from early voting in New York City, so that election is coming up really, really quickly. This Mandami is going to. Let's face it. I hate to say it, but unless something is totally wrong with the statistics and everything, he's going to be the mayor of New York. I wish I wasn't saying that, but he's probably going to be. I'm not dissuading people. I'm trying to send a warning. But Mandami, over the weekend, he posed a picture with these two guys. That one of them is an imam, and I think we got a picture of it we can post up there. And his name, please forgive me on the pronunciation. His name is Siraj. Wahhaj, Siraja Wahaji or something like that. He's a big imam. He's been up there for like 50 years in Bedford-Stuyvesant. But, and the other gentleman who's in this picture, did we post a picture? We did. The other gentleman is currently on the city council or city commission, however they label it, of New York City. And he came to fame as one of the Central Park Five, a group of 15 young men and some young boys and some men raped and beat this woman almost to death. She miraculously survived. This guy was 15 at the time. He admitted to the crime. He said he didn't rape her, but he was involved in the attack. He admitted to it. It ultimately got thrown out because he was only 15 and they didn't get permission from his parents to interview him, and it's thrown out. So hey, here you have Mandami posing with this guy he admitted he was a rapist, and this imam who literally celebrates the fact that churches have been closing across America and literally has called for a 10,000-man militia group in New York City to march and take over the streets on a daily basis. That's his crux of what he's trying to do. I mean, think about this, Ted.
This picture, you got Madani in his office, and those two guys have their shoes off. Madani's in there with his shoes on, so he must be a higher power. But Siraj Wahhaj is an imam, and he's sitting there laughing with him, and he is the one. He's an unindicted co-spirit of the 1993 World Trade Center bombing, who's been linked to other terrorist activity in the United States, including urging jihad on the Big Apple. So this is who Zohran Madani is, and as you said, the other guy was involved in that gang, that the Central Park Five, and it's Yusef Salam, a member of the Central Park Five who was elected in November 23. He was also in the photo. So this guy was involved in the beating and the raping of that woman, and Zohran Madani is embracing them. I had people that I knew that had that kind of a background. I would refuse to, number one, take money from them or to associate with them. But yet, he's showing his true colors here. And the people in New York, by God, wake up. This is your future. And if this is what you want, well, you deserve what you get. And, you're going to see, if he gets elected, and he probably will, you're going to see a whole different New York 5-10 years from now. And you're going to see, it's like a cancer, John. It just starts to spread everywhere. It's like termites more.
Well, Ted,
it's a decay. It just goes on and on.
Just to show you how insane this imam is, he had three sons, right?
Yeah.
They went out. People may remember this story. I had forgotten it till I looked into it a little bit. This was several years ago. His 3 sons went out. They had, I think, between them like about 20 children. They went out to New Mexico and founded this compound out there, and they started training these children in weapons and everything from 1 to 15
That's right. I remember
old.
that.
They finally, one of the neighbors out there complained because they were coming on his property. They went out and investigated. They found the remains of a 3-year-old in one of the tunnels. All the children were emaciated, and basically they were charged with terrorism tactics, child abuse, all of this kind of stuff. These are his 3 sons and his own grandchildren that he was literally starving them to death in a desert in New Mexico. I mean, this is a guy that Mandami is embracing. And the other guy admitted that he was part of the rape gang on this woman. And he's got elected to the city commission. New York may be over no matter what happens, Ted. It may be too far gone.
It really is. And it shows you that mindset in America, how toxic it is and how they can do these things and they're above the law in their minds and that it was okay to do those things. And Madani, I mean, he is very bold. I mean, here he is with these people that they have that track record. It's like Barack Obama getting his kickoff fundraiser was with Bill Ayers, a known terrorist of the United States that got off scot-free. And his famous quote was, "Guilty as sin, but free as a bird."
Absolutely. Well, I was going to play this video, but we've already done it in the past, so I'm not going to play it, about the intifada. You know, we know that Mandami has talked about globalizing the intifada. I want to read you something that this imam said about to people, because he's traveled around, that he's not a poor man, and he's always encouraging more Muslims to come here. And I'm not anti-Muslim, but you know, if you're not gonna, the thing about New York, we talked about it off the air, it used to be the capital of the world for assimilation. Not so much.
Sure.
So I don't have a problem with people coming here legally, assimilate into the culture. But this imam, this is what he said, Ted. He said that I'm asking for us, talking about Islamic fundamentalists, to greet the duty for jihad here in America. So he was encouraging people to come here and create jihad. And of course, globalizing intifada is part of jihad. So you had Mandami saying all this. I'll say this and I'll be quiet and let you take us out on this. But to me, Mandami is no dummy. He's, like him, hate him, whatever. He's a very bright, smart, well-educated guy. A lot of political people, when they are so far ahead, would think, okay, I'm going to try to stay out of controversy and I'm going to coast to the finish line and win this thing. He could easily do that, but he chose specifically to have a photograph 2 weeks before the election starts with these 2 people. That tells me, as I say, he's no dummy, that he truly embraces the ideology of these people. That's what it tells me.
You know what they say, a picture is worth 1,000 words, and this speaks loudly. This is who this guy is. And again, for this to happen in New York, like you said, that's where the Statue of Liberty is, where we welcome all people, bring us your sick, your poor, your wretched. And that was the landing point for so many immigrants that came into America that learned to assimilate and become Americans at heart. And they lived a great life here. And many of them are multimillionaires, probably some of them are oligarchs. But this group here is calling for the destruction of America, jihad here in America. I mean, that's war on America. And, you know, they can't exist together. And, you know, Muslims can live here and assimilate. Any religion can live here and assimilate. But I'll tell you this, Sharia law cannot coexist with U.S. constitutional law. They're antithetical to each other. They cannot coexist. For all those people out there that preach coexisting and you support this, you're going to have a rude awakening, because they cannot coexist, period. I mean, that's the facts. And so we need to get behind the Constitution. We need to get behind America and elect the leaders that are going to preserve those things. Those are the founding principles and core values that are really on the line here. And I mean, this is a wake-up call. And again, you go back to Obama. He told you exactly what he was going to do, and he did it. And then you look at Madani. He's telling you exactly what he's going to do. And if people are that uneducated and ignorant to put him in office, again, they deserve that. America doesn't deserve that. And if these people put him in office, they're going to have a very serious wake-up call.
Well, you mentioned Sharia law, Ted, and I'm glad you did, because people need to understand that jihad means Sharia law. That's what it means. So when you have this Ayman talking about bringing people to bring the jihad, he's talking about that. And this is the part that really gets me. You have these people standing up saying queers for Palestine. I'm not getting into the queers for Palestine. You got these blue-haired people doing. You got people out in Portland riding naked on their bicycles and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, now that was good.
This is the thing they need to understand. It just baffles me. Do they not understand that if people like this Iman have their way, and de facto Mandami is a puppet of theirs, which it seems like he is, they're going to be the first people shot? Now, they'll end up shooting all of us probably, but they'll wait a while on people like you and me because they'll be afraid we can defend ourselves. But if you're riding, do you see anybody riding naked through the streets of Baghdad? Do you see whenever women have stood up and tried to get their freedom, what has happened to those people? They're dead. You don't see them there. The only time you see women speaking against Iran is in this country.
That's right.
You don't see them over there. So all these people, think about this. When the communists took over Russia, who was the first person they shot? Trotsky. So all these people who are like so progressive, if these people like the Iman has his way, you're going to be the first to go. We're all going to go if they take. But you're going to be the first, and I'll shut up, Ted. I've said enough. Go ahead. Take us out.
I tell you, this got your dander a little riled there. I'm reading this. I did my research. I got my research assistant here. It said lefty New York City Mayor Zohran Madani gleefully campaigned this week with a notorious gay-hating Brooklyn Iman, who is the unindicted co-conspirator, and that guy is Zaraj Wahaj. And it just says he is a notorious gay-hating Brooklyn Iman. And as you said, all these people that are of a different mindset or persuasion than I am, if you want to support this guy, you're supporting, I don't want to say your own death, but you're supporting somebody that despises your lifestyle. And I don't know how you can reconcile this. You can't. Best thing to do is don't bring Madani in here. Bring good people in.
Absolutely.
And if you can't find a good candidate, you become the candidate.
Absolutely. I'm just trying to educate and motivate people and activate people. I'm not trying to persuade you to support Donald Trump. I'm trying to get you to love your country, with its flaws or whatever, and make it better, because the direction they're trying to push us in will end up being the destruction of America. That's just
it'll be the destruction from within. Of those 6 major things I said that are existential threats, 5 of them are internal. We're destroying ourselves. And this is something Nikita Khrushchev said back in the 60s. We don't have to fight around America. They'll destroy themselves from within.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate that. I hope you enjoyed our show today. Please like what we're doing, share what we're doing, sponsor what we're doing, all of those kind of things. And we'll see you next Friday, I do believe, Ted. I don't know where you'll be.
It is. And we sure I'll still be gone. Yeah. Anyways, y'all take care. We appreciate you watching, looking. We like watching our show. Please become a sponsor. We love your messages. Keep them coming. God bless. Take care. And have a great Monday.
Peace out.